What's up, everybody? We wanted to take a quick moment to remind each of you to please like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast. Tommy,
ring that bell.
Ring the bell. It goes a long way to support the podcast. Besides that, Tommy and I offer online coaching. The links for that will be below. The link for my merch store will be below as well. And without further ado, we bring to you a Thinking Man's Podcast. A Thinking Man's Podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of A Thinking Man's Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph PIRCHER, and with me, as always, my good friend Tommy Stiles. And today we are joined by prep coach Dom Kuza. Dom, what's up, man? Thanks for making time for the show.
Thanks for having me on today, man. I really appreciate it. I know we had talked about it a while ago, like when you guys first started. So I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, we wanted to pick up a little momentum before we were going to have all the heavy hitters on. We wanted to know what we were doing first. So,
I don't know if I'm a heavy hitter.
No, man. Just side note, I honestly have just become familiar with you within the last year or so, and in large part to Tommy always talking about you. And man, the work that you did this past year with getting all your guys on stage, all your athletes on stage, very impressive. Something that I noticed from afar and had my eye on for you. So respect for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And then kind of segueing right into our topic there from that, as you put all these people on stage this past year. And then I know Tommy had a specific topic that we're going to go into, so I'll kick it over to him.
Yeah, so it's the time of year where, like, pretty much, unless you're doing the Olympia or a weird December show, I'd say all the contest preps are done and over with. So that brings up reverse dieting. I think it's a good time of year to talk about it as people transition into the holidays and into off seasons. We kind of throttled down from the contest season of 2022. So, you know, Dom, I know you have at least 5 people from nationals, if not more, that are kicking into the reverse diet part of the season. So I thought it was a good time to kind of talk about it, lay out some considerations, both for men and women, what your thought process is on it, how you attack it with your athletes, and we'll just kind of get a roundtable going and go from there.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, probably one of the first things I actually saw when it came to reverse dieting was from John. I followed his blog a couple of years ago, and I got some really good ideas from John that I like doing with a lot of people. I'm probably a little bit more aggressive on the reverse dieting. I don't really do the super slow approach. Just because, you guys know how it is. You guys both competed. The faster we can get some of that body fat back on, the better people just feel, the better they sleep, the better everything kind of gets. So I'm a fan of, I wouldn't say aggressively putting back weight, but not as conservative, right? I'm not trying to keep them shredded. I'm okay with them losing some lines pretty quickly, just because I know they're just going to feel a lot better, through that whole process.
So is there if a show's on a Saturday, are you looking to get fired back up on a Monday right after the show?
Yeah, I usually give them the whole weekend to eat, kind of enjoy. I do have a conversation with them, though, that is usually along the lines of be mindful about it, because I'm a big believer in post-show binging ruining off seasons, because you kind of if you ever looked at Bloodwork after a binge or something like that, it is acute insulin resistance. There's inflammatory markers through the roof. You pretty much are setting yourself up to be insulin resistant during the beginning of your rebound if you binge too hard. So I do have that conversation, but I get it. People want to enjoy and relax. But usually Monday, we're back on track with everything. And my on track it's pretty, I would say it's probably near their current body weight times 14, 15 in cals. So it's a decent amount of food, right away, just to kind of curb any of those issues. I do like to pick favoriting protein just to control hunger a little bit. And then I'll usually give them more carbs, because people just, crave the carbs more. And I'll have the fats a little bit on the lower end. That's mostly how I reverse people out of shows. Personally, myself, I competed in 21 last year in April. I took over my reverse and just did it myself. That was the first thing I did, was jack up my protein, give myself a good amount of carbs, and let that body fat come back a little bit faster, just so I could sleep again and do things again.
Have you found doing that? Both, you mentioned that you did it with yourself and then also with your clients too. besides all of like these biomarkers where sleep comes back, sex drive comes back, all that, do you find that it's just easier to get somebody to adhere when you throw a ton of food at them?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think because like to them, they don't feel like they're dieting anymore. So
Right.
usually what I do is like I look at like what we might have carved up on or what their like last refeed looked like going into the show,
Mm.
that we were doing kind of weekly at that point, and that's usually my starting point for their food. Just to just because that felt good, they feel good. It's not a low amount of food. Their hunger is going to be high still, but it's not going to be as high as if I was like we're adding 200 calories a week kind of thing.
Yeah. And then to that point, I agree with you because it's almost like the psychology behind it is almost like people, it seems like with binging behavior, it's almost like this restrictive, like they're not sure when their next meal or their next cheat meal or any of these things are going to come. So if you just hit push a ton of food on somebody, they know food is coming. Like it almost seems like it just curbs um,
That
that
mental
desire.
like hunger, yeah,
Yeah.
that mental
And
hunger
then
they feel.
I wanted to ask too, because I've seen you this year, like I said, putting people on stage, both male and female, and so that's something I've just intentionally shied away from is helping a lot of females, especially enhanced females. So in that reverse process, have you found that you need to tailor maybe your communication and then also like the X's and O's just from male to female? Have you picked up on any
Yeah,
themes that are
the, the
noticeable differences?
the delivery on my end of the coach is a little bit different, like how I communicate what we're going to be doing. I do like to get a little bit more aggressive with returning fats back to a diet with women more so than men, especially if like the girl lost her cycle or something like
Mm.
throughout the prep. Um, so that's kind of like I would say would be the biggest difference. And then like when it comes to enhancements too, one thing that I do at least during reverses is if I have like T3 into play during that last week and we come into that reverse, I'm usually leaving the dose kind of where it was at for a week or two. My dose is really, they get high sometimes, but that's really temporary. But if for the most part, it's like 25 to 37 and a half. And I'll keep them on that 37 and a half, like a week post show, 2 weeks post show, maybe, just because I know that we're going to have cheats, we're going to have things. Their body was used to functioning at that speed. That essentially is what T3 is doing for us, right? So at that speed constantly, then you add in like all the added calories and things like that and the reduced cardio, right? So output changes a lot. I want to keep their body at that speed just to ease on the fat gain back. I noticed like that has helped a lot of people, just like with their reverses all in all. Because I think that's where like the misconception of my thyroid is fucked post show. No, it's not. You were just used to 100 miles an hour thyroid. Now your
Yeah.
thyroid's back at 10 miles an hour and you think you can eat the same amount of food.
Yeah, I feel like that's always been something that's been a common thing. Like immediately post show, you hear that people remove their T3, remove their clen even. And like you said, with the timing of it and knowing that food's going to be up, knowing that output is going to be down, you're kind of pulling the rug out from underneath somebody. So that's an interesting approach. And then same thing, like male to female, is that a similar concept that you use, and any distinctions between the two?
It's probably a similar concept I use with both of them.
Yeah.
What it looks like if it was like a thyroid hormone situation, it would be tapering them back down to nothing, and then after the nothing, I'm using something like Thyro Boost Essentials that has like all the mineral support for their thyroid, just to get their thyroid back up a little bit more naturally. Just because we do see some suppression, you're going to see it. So I rather support it right after we get off the meds to kind of help it come back a little bit quicker.
And then if we're talking the process of reverse dieting, what are you looking for? So say that first week, that first set of pictures, is that like going to be a new baseline? And then from there, you're kind of looking to see visual changes kind of going the other way out of a contest prep? Or are you looking at like body weight, how fast it's accruing? What are some markers that you're looking at along the way to determine if the reverse is a success or not? Because I know, especially on the female side, there's a huge mental component to seeing that scale start to go back up. So how do you handle that as well?
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to do is communicate like we get past that week or 2 weeks and they obviously get softer. And usually I'll communicate with them just to kind of give them like a little bit of like mind easing by saying things like, all right, this is probably where I want to hold you. And this is kind of where I'm going to try to keep your pictures at. Because if we can keep you, this at this position, then we're going to have a good setup for an off season, right? Obviously, like I've had off seasons with women who just got too soft, and then prep was very difficult. So like, I've learned from that and I'm able to apply that now. Body weight wise, I don't want to see like a 10% body weight gain in like less than a month, because then that's probably way too fast. So I like to see it ease into things. Usually after that first week, I see you'll see the spike, but during that second week, I think they come back down because they kind of get those cheats out of the way too. So I usually give it a couple of weeks before I like really make a decision on like what the next move is going to be, just because everyone's different, whether how much they cheat, snack, or anything like that post show. Like I have guys like Joey who are militant, and like it was the cheat meal after the show, the cheat meal the day after, and then he was back on track, right? So his weight gain was very limited, right? But then I have had some people in the past where it's like every night they're having something small with their food that week.
Yeah, I've noticed people, it's the snacking that will actually get you more than the meal itself, because if the snacks are like cookies and especially like peanut butter or the nut butter, like all those fancy nut butters, like those jars can go down quick, and that's a lot of calories. As far as supplementation, so are you pulling PEDs right down to TRT right after the show, or is there ever a case where you'll keep it in to?
I'd say it's probably case by case. I would say for the men, for the girls, we're down to TRT. I don't really do anything crazy there. But for the guys, some of them I'll keep on like a higher test dose, or I'll keep them on the same test dose they were on for like the first 2 weeks, and then pull it back down to TRT. But then we have half-lives built up, so we're definitely going to see that for like a couple more weeks before we're actually at TRT levels. So I've done both. Like Joey, I reversed him and I left him at like 500 tests for like 2 weeks post-show, and then now he's back down to his normal HRT. But in reality, weeks 3, 4, and 5 are all pretty much elevated still. So he's definitely seeing that. Todd was the same way. We kept his tests a little bit high after his show. But I usually pull all the other anabolics post-show. So it's usually just test the T3. I'll introduce GH back into play, and then just kind of see where things go from there. I've tried IGF-1 post-show just because of its insulin sensitivity that it helps with, and like driving blood sugars a bit better. I've tried a lot of different things.
What'd you think about it?
I like the IGF-1. So one thing that I did with Todd, and we did it with Joey, when Joey was bridging from North Americans to Nationals, that little bit of forcing time there, he couldn't be on drugs for 30 weeks. So we had to pull some of this stuff down. I just pulled him down to like a sports TRT, and then we used like 100 micrograms of IGF-1 for a couple of weeks, and we actually saw some pretty good like response from it. He was like 6 pounds heavier at Nationals than he was in North Americans. So I don't know if it was contributed to that or just some rest or what, but it was definitely nice to see. And then same with Todd, we were in a post-show rebound where I brought in the IGF-1, and he stayed really lean. He's up like 30 pounds from stage, and he's still cruising. So definitely saw some nice results from it. Now, was it real and 100% pure? I don't know, because that's a hard drug to find, like pure.
Right.
Man, there's going to be a ton of people that listen to this and try to get their hands on some IGF-1 now. They're going to hear that 6 pounds. But I caught one thing that you mentioned, and I wanted to come back to it, because you said that in this like kind of post-show phase, you'd reintroduce growth. Are you kind of making it a staple that you pull growth from your guys leading into the show? I know it's going to be person dependent, but
no, I usually do pull it about 10 days out. Reason being is because like one, we see an aldosterone spike every time you inject it. So if we're injecting it daily, I'd rather have aldosterone really controlled going into peak week than the 2% of fullness that they're going to gain from it. So I rather have them drier and tighter and conditioned than 1% fuller because of the growth.
For sure. Yeah. Do you use ARBs with your guys or no?
Yeah, I'll use
Okay.
Telmasart and I'll work that up to like 80, 100,
Yeah.
just to like really
It's a
control
good
the
tool at the
ending.
end there. Yeah.
Honestly, I have most of everybody use it year round now. So
Yeah.
like 20 in the off season. If we're working with a bit of heavier weight and we're gaining and pushing, we'll get to 40, 60. And towards the end of preps, we're like we're around 80. That I had a mental Z guy who, not the one that won the overall, but I had another guy who took sixth. He was on 80 milligrams of telmisartan, and it was the driest I've ever gotten somebody. I've never had somebody look like that before, like in their
I
midsection.
mean, it's honestly like what the best version, like the action that we get from that is basically the best case scenario diuretic, right? Like,
Yeah, ideally. I mean, as much control as we can get on aldosterone, we're going to see a nice response with water retention. So that's kind of my
yeah,
thought process behind it all.
yeah. No, that's cool. That's interesting.
I'll even use aldactone at times at low doses for the guys who get really stressed out before a show, because if we can control aldosterone a little bit more through that, I'm okay with that because it's such a poor diuretic and it just helps. It's really good at potassium storages. So other than that, we're not seeing a lot of water loss. We're not seeing a lot of sodium loss. We're seeing more potassium buildup, but we're also seeing that really nice effect it has on aldosterone. So I'll give like a low dose of aldactone to the people that I know really tweak out mentally before they get on stage.
It's slow too, like you said. It's kind of mild and it's kind of slow. I'm with you. I've always leaned towards aldactone as opposed to a diazide. A diazide just feels like you're dropping a fucking bomb on somebody. Like regardless of
Yeah,
how much you wind up using, because it's so quick and so harsh, I just see it do more damage than good. Whereas aldactone, it's a little bit slower. You might take a small dose over 3 or 4 days, and it's just nice and smooth.
yeah. If
Uh,
I use aldactone, it's usually like 6 days out. We start.
yeah,
We'll use a
yeah,
dose slow and daily at that point. I like diazide too. I use that a decent amount, but I'll use quarters at a time and just kind of see what it does. I mean, that's like under the clinical dosage effect at a
yeah.
quarter, so it's very minimal. But I like the way it works. I think it's a good tool. I think diuretics are great tools. I know John doesn't like them, but I'm a big fan of them just because I think if you know how to use a diuretic, you get a lot of good results from it. But I think
Yeah.
that's kind of where John's thought process is on them, is that a lot of people don't know how to use them correctly.
Right.
So you might as well not even use them at that point.
Yeah. That and it's like he wants to make it clear that it's not like a band-aid Hail Mary at the end. Like
No, it's
do
absolutely
your
not.
homework before, you know.
Right. Couple good thoughts there. I think there's a couple things I've noticed just from myself and then coaching others, like with reverse dieting. The biggest one being psychological. Like most dudes want to come out of the show, most males come out of the show, especially in body, like you want to move up to the next weight class. So you're already thinking like, I got to eat big to get big. And then because you're riding this metabolic wave, you might eat like an asshole. And I'm with you, Dom, about getting the body weight up quicker. Like I think I was up 20 pounds in 2 weeks, and I was sleeping better. I was fuller. My training performance was back. But I'm a naturally lean guy who doesn't have a problem, with staying lean. So what I've noticed with some males is like they go so hard that first week that they've kind of ruined the runway for their off season because of week one. And then same thing with female, even more so with females, whereas females have more of like the cravings and they'll cave to them, but then there's the guilt that kicks in. So then they'll throw in high amounts of cardio that the coach doesn't know about, or there's just this whole psychological cascade that happens.
Yeah.
So how you already mentioned that you're kind of communicating with them week one, week two. Are you communicating the timeline of like, hey, this is, tentatively how long we're going to be in this reverse phase, and then we'll start the off season at this point? Is that something you're doing?
Yeah. So I was just about to say, more so specific with the women. I like to kind of be post show and already have a pretty good idea of what we're going to be doing next. Like Lyric is what, 2 weeks post show, and we already talked about kind of what our competitive season is going to look like next year. I think that alone helps them mentally to be like, all right, well, I have my plan already for next year. Like, I can't go off the deep end right now because we are working towards something, right? I think it's a lack of working towards something that I think females really struggle with, like in reverse diets. My bikini client that did nationals, same thing. It was we talked after, like, during the week after nationals, and it was like, you're doing USAs, so it was like you got 9 weeks and then prep starts again. So we're pretty much like, giving them a little bit of a goal and direction of like timelines of when things are going to start. I think really helps them like just stay locked in during the reverse a lot. Even some of the guys too, like Joey, I had to talk to him a little bit about, like, you've been in prep for 30 weeks. I can't get your body weight up really fast right now, because that on top of all that prepping we did, your body's just going to be ran the fuck down. So like with him, I'm taking a slower approach, because rapid weight gain for him would be a bad thing, because his markers probably aren't good right now anyways. So I don't want to make them worse. So I'm taking a slower approach with him. Versus like the other guys, like, I'm just using the nationals because it was just so recent, but like, Ryan took 6th at men's physique. He doesn't want to compete for 2 years. So we kind of are mapping out his off seasons and everything we're doing now. AJ wants to get ready for his pro debut. So, that's another thing. Like, so we have like all of our set targets for everything. It's not kind of like, all right, we'll see when you compete again. It's kind of like, I like giving them direction of when things are tentatively going to happen.
Mm-hmm. I think that's good, male or female. That's good. Like I need that myself. Like I need some type of light at the end of the tunnel. I like having my timelines laid out, right? Like, so yeah, I think that's the coaches that do that and communicate that. I think you have so much of an easier time getting that buy-in all year from somebody. Because like you said, it's very easy, not very easy, but it's easy to be locked in when you have like this clear dopamine driven journey where there's like a very clear goal, and then it disappears, and it's easy to have like, the post-show blues, all these different things that people go to. So keeping a plan in place of how important the off season is, I think, is something that we talk about all the time, and obviously something that you're relaying to your clients too. So, we have a lot of people that want to compete or do compete that listen to this. Like, this is what you should come to expect from your coach, is this type of communication.
Yeah, it's paramount. And then even not if you're not at the national level, like I still have the same talk with a first-time competitor. Like, if the most competitors need more size, so the best course of action is to probably take a whole season off after your first or second show, and then spend the time away from the stage to get better, so your placings and your overall package can improve. But mentally, you need to be able to prep for that. Like, hey, you're like, if you competed, I had a girl who do her first show in June, and she's not competing again until June of 24. But she knew that before her prep was even done, because I wanted her to mentally be ready to transition to that, to becoming more of a well-rounded bodybuilder, which bodybuilding is done in the off season. That's where you're actually building your body. So you have to learn to love that part of the process more than prep, or you're never going to have successful preps that are getting better.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way to think about it too. I think I like recently I've probably been a little spoiled with who I've been working with, like who don't need that kind of time. Like they're kind of knocking at the door right now. But I do have the people who, like, I've had the conversations where it's like, you probably need at least 2 years. Like a 2-year off season for you is probably going to make you competitive. So yeah, I competed 2018, and I didn't again until 21. So that was a 3-year break, and I was a lot bigger. And that is a big reason why, is because it takes time. Enhanced or not, it takes time. And I was enhanced.
Yeah. Adding, I mean, Joe's coined it on this show, like adding more human to your frame is not an overnight process.
No,
it's a fucking slow. Crazy process, dude. It's a crazy, bizarre thing, honestly.
And it's a very, very slow thing. No matter how many drugs you take, no matter how much food you eat, it's a very slow thing.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you approach so blood work? What is your protocol there as far as how soon are you getting it post show?
I would say about 3 to 4 weeks post show. I want those initial stressors of like peak weeks to kind of disappear and like getting the reverse started, and then kind of see, because we're still going to see what the drugs did to the person. Like, a couple of weeks after the show, we'll still see the impact they had. But if I want to try to see it like without having, if they went through an extreme peak week, like they might not have the best blood, like their blood work might be a little skewed because of that. That's a one-time stressor for them. I want to try to see it without it. So usually it's about 3 to 4 weeks post show. I make them take, even training wise, like I don't send anybody a training plan until at least like 2 weeks post show. I don't even want people training after a show, but everyone wants to. So it's usually like go in and I tell them go in and have fun, do some shit that you've missed, and then we can get started on everything. I don't do it just because I try to give people a break, because like they've just been going so hard for so long. They probably mentally need the break, and then their joints and everything probably they feel good. They're on this high of food and being post show, but in reality, their bones are not, and their ligaments and stuff are not ready to slam some weight the way they used to, and they think mentally they can again. So I try to get people to honestly take a break post show. Like Ryan hasn't trained since nationals. He's still taking a rest from nationals, which you probably see a lot of big guys do. Like Kevin Levrone used to do that shit. He used to not train for months. James Hollingshed, when he finishes Olympia, he doesn't train for like 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, even Rami won in 2020 and then didn't train for 3 or 4 months after that, and then came back and still won. So
yeah, see, I think it's just like the week after the show for me. I try to tell people chill.
What do you do, Dom, when you compete? Do you take the following week off?
I'll probably take like at least 4 to 5 days post show off.
Okay.
I'm usually not back in the gym. I'll maybe go do cardio. And then even the sessions I do get back in, I'm just pumping, just kind of having fun training. And then I'm not really getting into a program until like 2 weeks, 3 weeks post show.
Yeah.
I think the start of week 3 post show is a good time to start a training program. Just from my own feedback and then clients. I agree with you. I think, and I was someone who more often than not, if the show was on a Saturday, I was training on Sunday just because that was my mental. But now I actually realize that I probably don't need to be in a gym till Wednesday. There's a big hurry to get back in there.
Yeah.
So I think 4 to 5 days is fair just to like take away from training and just kind of chill, especially if you have a short, if your plans are like, hey, we did this show and I'm going to be back on stage in under 12 months. Like the urgency is going to be there for you very, very soon. So maybe enjoy half of a week and just like force yourself to chill and stay out of the gym. I think, you notice some people who develop exercise addiction in prep and they can't stay away from the gym or they can't stay off a Stairmaster. Like I've seen that happen to a lot of, especially females. They can't stay out of the gym.
Yeah, no, I've seen that happen a lot too. Which again is just like a coaching moment for us to kind of guide them the right way at that point. I'm a huge proponent of rest, and a lot of people that work with me who aren't used to that are like, "What the fuck am I doing?" Because I just think it's such a underutilized tool for people.
Now, what's an example? Like, are you somebody that uses like diet breaks and deloads in prep? Like, what's an example of something that's caught people off guard?
I'll use diet breaks at times, but it probably comes to the training and cardio the most, because once somebody's within like 6 weeks out, they're checking in practically every other day. So when we're at that point, I can get a gauge for like their fatigue. I'm making calls like, hey, don't do any cardio today. Don't train today. Don't do this today. And that's caught a lot of people off guard where they're like, what do you mean don't train today? Like, why wouldn't I train? And it's like, I could just tell like with some feedback that we're more fatigued than we are anything else. Pulling back at this point is probably going to help you more than hurt you or anything like that. I'll do like, if they're on a training program with me, like we'll get through like usually about 10 weeks worth of it. And then I'll hit them with like, they could be 6 weeks out for the show. And I'll be like, next 4 days, you're not training. And then at that point, they're like, damn, like, really? And I'm like, yeah, because I want to see how you look after some days of rest at this point. So I've done that a lot, and that's thrown a lot of people, because a lot of people come from like coaches who kind of just run people through the ground. And then they get hit with like that, and they're like, what do you mean? Like, how am I going to make any progress if I'm not doing anything? But that's where I think like the fatigue, stress management, you can get somebody way more peeled if you're good at stress and fatigue management than you could with pushing them.
100%. Yeah. Now, I kind of wanted to ask you, so we were talking about it earlier, and I feel like this is always like a hot topic. So cheat meals, I want to hear what your thought process is on them in prep, and then also coming out of the show. What do you try to put numbers on it? Do you try to guide people and say, hey, keep it under this many calories, or give people like food options? Because with some people, I've had to lay out like, hey, as an option, you could do a burger and fries, you could do a steak and potato, this like that. So I'm always curious to hear how other coaches do things.
I'm not a big cheat meal guy.
Okay, right on.
I don't really give cheats during an off season or during a prep. It's usually like really high refeeds that are like carried over for a couple of days.
Yeah.
Rather like I do a lot of carb cycling with clients, and their high days get pretty high. And then, I'll do some refeeds, like spontaneous refeeds. Like if I told somebody like, take the break off from training today, don't do any cardio, I'm going to add 200 grams of carbs to today. This is what I want to do today. I'll do things like that. Post show, I'm cool with eating. I tell people, you're going to enjoy food, so go ahead. Cheat meals, like in the off season and stuff, I tell people 1 every 7 days. So that doesn't mean every Friday, but you had one on, like if you had one Friday, but the next week is Tuesday, that doesn't mean you're having a cheat again 2 days later. I tell them every 7 days we could have a free meal.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like off season for me. But during prep, no, I don't really use cheat meals. There's probably times where I probably should have, like with some people who just mentally needed it, rather than like, there's probably some times where I was coaching some people where they were so addicted to food that a cheat meal might have actually helped them stay on track.
Yeah.
But that's just, that's something I got to get better at with learning people. I'm a big data guy. So like, if I don't know what they're eating, I get very anxious. So like, if I don't know the calories, carbs, fats, sodium, everything in the meal, I have a hard time with just giving that to somebody.
Especially in prep, because you want it to be useful. Like there's a reason that we're doing it. I need to refill you. And so if I can't replicate that, then it's almost useless. It's like, if I don't know what exactly was in this that you were eating, I'm probably not using this when it matters. So it's almost a waste. That's a big thing. Tommy and I have taken some shit online because we're very, I guess, not so pro cheat meal. And it's just a matter of momentum is what I've just seen it with myself, with people that I help. The longer you can go without these like, wild off-plan meals, because a lot of guys that I help, just, it's not just a meal, like they fucking binge out. And it's like, I get we're super restrictive and we live in a box, but also the longer you can go in between those, I just feel like you build greater momentum. Like you said, like you get somebody's blood work after one of these like binges. We've talked about it. It's like, man, that might set, if you have a huge cheat meal Friday night, your digestion, your blood sugar, all these things might not be back to normal until Tuesday. And then it's like, I just wasted 5 days of this week.
Yeah. And like, I don't like them because I think it's hard in giving them to people because they turn into binges, and then we're backwards at that point, right? Like I've had it in the past where like people have asked for the cheat. They're a decent amount of time off. All right, cool. They're a decent amount of time away from the show. All right, cool. Let's do it. They'll do it. Then check-in's late on Monday. Why is it late? Are you okay? Oh man, I ate all weekend. Like, Well, this is why I don't give them fucking cheat meals. So,
Yeah.
like, that's one thing I've ran into a lot, and I think that's the main reason why I don't give them. Very, very, very seldomly do I give a cheat meal during prep now.
Now you had mentioned doing more so like a refeed style, and then you put in the comment that it will be over a couple days. Did you ever have a period where you tested just one big day with someone, and then you've evolved to spreading it out over a couple days? Because
Yeah,
in
I
my
probably still
experience,
do.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
No,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, so I probably do more one day
Oh, you
heavier
do? Okay.
refeeds. Yeah. But I started doing like multiple back to backs. So I'll do the back to backs if somebody's really digging.
Yeah.
If they're really digging to get them out of the hole a little bit better, I'll give them 2 days to get out of that hole rather than one day. Just because it's better, right? The research on leptin and carbs is like back and forth constantly. So
Yeah.
we could sit here and say, does it help? Does it not help? Right? We have both ends of data right now. So
Yep.
I don't know. I feel like it does, whether it's a psychological reason or just
I
a
was just going to
stress
say, if nothing
reason.
else, if the research goes back and forth, because you're right, it's like looking for a physiological difference. I could prove it one way or another with the research that we have. But even if it's just psychologically, that's a benefit. That's a real life benefit.
Yeah, no, I agree. So that's why, like, I'll start doing that like that. Like sometimes I'll give them like the whole weekend, like
Okay.
Saturday, Sunday, or maybe Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like if we're really digging hard. So that's how I like come to use refeeds.
Cool.
That's kind of my thought process. I think even if I would never give someone a cheat meal in a prep that I didn't know what the contents of it were going to be. So if they did have a big meal or it was foods off plan, it was because I told them to.
Mm.
And I knew ahead of time. Like I had a guy, my classic physique guy in the fall, who I needed him to eat a lot of food because we were losing too much weight too quickly. So, it was like this massive day of eating that I gave him, but it was all accounted for. It wasn't like, here's have 500 grams of carbs and however you get to 500 is your choice. Like, I don't think that's setting people up for success, because I had situations where I did that in my earlier years, and I had coaches tell me that. And I just think there's too many emotions. Like if you're a seasoned veteran and you've done a few preps and you don't have an emotional tie to food, maybe. But if you tell someone who's in their first or second prep just to get to 500 carbs, like, dude, I'm going to Dunkin' Donuts and I'm not eating bodybuilding foods, and I'm not worried about GI health, and I'm not worried about anything. So I think that's just a recipe for disaster. Dom, where are you at with if you did see blood work that is, I guess, poor, does that extend the quote unquote health phase?
Mm.
Or are you using that's just your baseline blood work post show and you'll get more blood work before jumping into an off season, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, we'll get the post show, and we'll always get it before off season, like blast starts. I always do that regardless. Even if like their post show wasn't that bad or wasn't bad at all, I'm not making the assumption that by the time we're ready for off season that we're good to go. So I like doing that. It'll extend the health phase if needed. But in my opinion, dude, a lot of those markers just come back with removing the stressors and throwing a couple things at them to help, right? I don't think like, as long as like gut health is fine and things like that, I don't think there's like a big call for a huge long ass health phase. Like I'm talking months long, because a lot of those markers do come back with removing the anabolics, removing the stress, removing the cleanse, removing all those things that have been stressing the body out for so long. I think a lot of that stuff just comes back kind of well, naturally. Like even my blood work post show in 21, I probably pushed the envelope with drugs that year, just because I was curious, and why not be curious on myself? So it was actually shocking though, because
What's pushed, Tom? I have to ask. Hold on, I have to ask you now. What's
I was
pushing
at
it?
like
Let's hear it.
I was at like 2.5 grams
Okay.
of total gear. I was on multiple orals.
Okay.
My trend was really up there. I was just curious. I
How
was like,
much? What's up there?
I was on 500.
Okay.
I
And
mean, keep in mind,
at
I was
that point, what are you?
100 pounds.
Yeah, okay. At that point, though, with that level of trend, what are you seeing as far as side effects go? I'm just curious. I've talked about it. We've talked about it on the show. I've done up to 600, and it even anything beyond 300 for me, it turns me into a maniac. My sleep is all over the place. I'm having violent dreams and waking up in pools of sweat. It's disgusting. But I'm always curious to hear others people's response.
Trend, like a high dose of trend for me, it makes me emotional apathetic. Like I just have a
Sure,
stone face the whole time.
sure.
My sleep is pretty messed up too, but that's really the only thing. I don't get the aggression that some people
Okay.
get.
All
I'm
right.
pretty mellow still,
Yeah.
but it's the apathy I get. Like I don't care about anything when I'm on trend.
Yeah.
But I was on like 500 trend. I was pushing like 100 Winnie, 50 Halo. Like I was pushing the orals a lot.
Did you get blood work
Just
right after the show?
2 days post show, I did.
And was it a wreck or what?
It was probably some of my best blood work.
Whoa.
So I was like, either I had fake drugs or my body was pretty resilient.
Yeah. Or you might have fucking ultimate resilient genes. Okay.
So
So hearing that part of you had to have been like, maybe I could just blast a ton of drugs all the time.
part of me did say that, and then
Yeah.
part of me was like, maybe I just didn't have dosed right drugs though,
Sure.
because the amount of orals I was on for my liver enzymes to be like 60 and 50, I was shocked. I was like,
Yeah.
there's no way this is right.
Even just the
Granted, I was
halo,
doing
dude. Even just the halo alone. That should have crushed it.
even, granted, even I was doing my super dosing NAC, doing all that all the time,
Yeah.
but I was like, there's no way that was that effective to controlling my liver enzymes at that point. But so yeah, like that post show, like even that, like my EGFR was still 100 at that point, and I
Okay.
was just shocked at the blood work I had. And even with that, I still took a 10-week cruise, and I still got blood work done before I started my next push. So like, even
So,
if blood
Doug,
work
let
is
me
still
ask, what
good,
would you see? What in a client's blood work at that? You go get that 8 week post show blood work, right? It's kind of that green light blood work to begin the off season. What would it take for you to see on that to want to extend the health phase for someone? Like any
EGFR
any
under
red flags? Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah, EGFR under 80, I'm still not putting you on drugs, just because I need that to be higher. And then looking at things like cortisol, as long as if cortisol is in a good range, we can probably start to. But I would say the biggest red flags, like for me to continue an off like a health phase, um, would be EGFR still low. Um, Cortisol is either high, if it's super high or super low, one of the two. We're gonna hold off on things. And then even look, I don't want to say I don't look at lipids because I think they're important, but I rather look at triglycerides and I rather look at VLDL together and see where those are at versus like their LDL and HDL. My
Yeah.
HDL has been 30 since I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
So it's not coming up. It's not
Yeah.
getting any better. Like genetically, that's where I'm at right at this point. As long as I'm by my baseline for those kind of markers, I'm
Sure.
okay with it. So EGFR, cortisol, CRP is another one too,
Yeah.
and those are probably the three biggest that I'll look at as far as like 8 weeks. We're ready to start your off season. Like, oh shit, you know what? We need some more time with this.
Yeah, I think I've had high LDL since high school, so I don't think you can go by just that. I mean, my grandpa's on a statin, my mom has high cholesterol. There is just hereditary component that comes into play with certain lipid markers.
Yeah, like my HDL has never been over like a 30, and I have blood work. I have blood work still from when I was 13 and 14 years old. So I'm happy I actually have it because I'm able to look back and look at those and be like, damn, I've been like this whole time.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't the drug use that did this to me. It's something that I've been having just my whole life, essentially.
I've seen my HDL tanked before, like on that. You get your on cycle blood work right in the middle of a big push, and I think I've seen mine at like 12, maybe 14.
Yeah, I've been down there like a 10, 12.
And what's
Anabar crushes my HDL the most.
mm.
You said Anabar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've
I've
said
said
that too, Tommy.
I've
Yeah.
said on this podcast before, like Anavar is not a girl drug. Like that drug does a number to my lipids, and I've only pushed 40 milligrams. I've never went higher. And Anavar will wreck a lipid panel just as much as Anadrol. Um, is there anything else you have, Dom? Do you want to touch on anything else to do with reverse dieting or blood work, anything in general?
No, I'm enjoying this conversation.
Yeah, kind of a little round table. So where do people find you if they want to inquire about your coaching? I know you're doing a lot. You just left you started your own thing back up, so you can kind of plug yourself.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
So my Instagram handle is just _ Dom Kuza now. I just started back on my own. I left the coaching team that now I'm just on my own. I have 2 coaches that work with me, but they were mentees beforehand, and they just joined me to work as at Team Kuza.
Congrats on that, man. There's a level in that alone. So congrats on that.
Yeah, no, thank you. It definitely was. I started on my own, and I was on my own for a while, and then some of the back end stuff got a little hectic for me. Because I was pushing at one point like 190 clients.
Whoa, dude! What?
So it was a lot to keep track of the billing and everything. And then they helped me with all that. And then I just started to, I don't know, I learned how to do everything on my own. And now I'm back on my own. It took me about a week to like make my website, do everything on my own. But after that, it was pretty smooth transition because now I'm like comfortable around like 140 clients. And I mean, I work every day, but other than that, it's not overwhelming anymore to where I need that help.
Man, that's a fuck ton of, dude. That's a fuck ton of clients. Dude.
190. That was
even 140, dude. Even 140, I feel like is that you're comfortable with that, like in terms of the balance between your quality of life and like obviously the income and the stress that comes along with that.
No, my quality of life definitely needs improvement, but it's a balancing act for sure. But I'm slowly reducing my roster. Okay. My roster is getting smaller and smaller, just because I have other projects that are going on.
Now you're mentoring other coaches now too, right?
Yeah, so I have a mentorship with people, with coaches. It's a 1-hour call weekly with me. We go over like a curriculum style. That's been a lot of fun, and I have like 13 mentees right now.
Wow,
and then
congrats,
I have
that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And then I have a group of coaches that I mentor too, like a company that is a team of coaches. We have a group call every week. But yeah, to piggyback, to just backtrack on the client amount, I'm a big lifestyle coach too. So one of the things with that client load, it's not as debilitating as you think because a lot of it is lifestyle work.
Sure.
I would say more than half is actually lifestyle work.
Okay.
So yeah, that's why when people freak out about the number, and I'm like, let's backtrack a little bit because it's a lot of lifestyle clientele that I work with too.
Yeah. Now, when I remember, I have a set of questions that we ask or that I ask every guest. And so we asked, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given? And then conversely, what is the worst piece of advice you've ever been given? And it can be about anything. It doesn't have to be bodybuilding or coaching.
The best piece of advice that I've gotten that's probably helped me a lot throughout this whole thing is every person you talk to is a potential person to work with. So be mindful about how you talk to everybody that you come across. Don't brush people off. Don't give somebody the time of day because it'll go maybe 6-7 months down the road. They refer somebody to you. Maybe they join you. You don't know. Right. So that was like one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten, like for business and coaching.
Yeah.
Probably one of the worst pieces of advice. I mean, like, shit, I don't even know because I just don't remember it.
Or something maybe that didn't work out, anything like that.
I would say one of the more poor pieces of advice I've gotten is trying to be everybody's emotional assistant with coaching.
Fact.
Don't do that, because that crosses boundaries that you shouldn't be crossing. Then you're turning your coaching into now full blown therapy where people think they can reach out to you at all times. That's like one of the biggest things I teach my coaches is like have everything in strict lining right now as you're growing, so that when you do scale to a lot of clients, you're not having to deal with that. Because that was something I had to deal with for a while and had to slowly. Honestly, I've had to get rid of the clients. Like, I can't help you anymore because this is just no longer where it needs to be.
So you're all in, and like you wear your heart on your sleeve, and like you're an emotional kind of sounding board, and that was a struggle for you early on.
Yeah, because it turned into where clients were turning into like a relationship almost, where I was like, I can't be that emotional support for you because I'm not. That's not what you hired me for.
Right. Yeah, it's tough. It's something I'm struggling with myself, to be honest.
It's rough because it's a fine line of like giving a shit about your client versus like now you're holding their hand throughout everything. And I think that's where
they almost really abuse it. It becomes that they're so needy that they need their hand held for everything. And it's like, man, like
they for sure abuse it.
Yeah. No, but that's I think that's good advice. I know that there's a lot of people that listen to this that also aspire to coach or are helping others, and it's a good message because it's one that I'm struggling with myself. So I wouldn't have thought to bring that up. So I don't know that Tommy deals with that. He just tells it how it is and moves on.
No, I've gotten a lot. I've gotten
too long. Didn't read.
Dom, I pay attention to the content Dom puts out, and he walks along the same line I do with some of his thoughts on philosophy and like controlling how you react to situations. Like that's stoicism in a nutshell. So I think we all possess it more than we realize. I just have like kind of tried to adopt it as like my defining.
It's part of your identity. Yeah.
But I think. Go ahead.
No, you got it.
No, Don.
I was going to say, I think having the ability to remove emotion from decision making will make you the best coach that you could ever be. Honestly, anything in life, really, just removing emotion from decisions or just communicating is a big thing. Which me and Tommy really like that kind of stuff. That's stoicism, right? You're not emotionally tied to anything. And I think that is something that I've learned over the last like year or so. That's really transformed like my life and everything. Because I have a family, like I have a wife, I have a kid. Like I can't work 17 hours a day anymore. I can't be there to answer every single text message all day long, like I used to be, right? So now with that in play, I've had to like really say like learn how to say no, but not feel bad about it.
Yeah. So maybe I just need to run 500 milligrams of Tren all year, and I'll just be completely detached from it. All right, man. Well, we're right at an hour. Want to thank you for coming on. This was awesome. It's the best.
Thanks for having me.
The best episodes that we wind up doing just sound like conversations where we're all shooting the shit. So really appreciate you coming on, man. I think this was going to be super valuable to anybody listening. I feel that way just as a fellow coach, taking in everything that you had to say. So
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. We appreciate you taking time. So for Dom Kuza, for Tommy Stiles, I'm Joseph PIRCHER. This was a Thinking Man's podcast. Until next time, guys, we are out. A Thinking Man's podcast.